welcome back. This is Jennifer J. at Moving Forward, and this is episode 105. And today we are going to be in the Bible in 2 Chronicles chapter 34. So you can see where I'm at. It's almost halfway in your Bible, but a little bit to the left. So if you open it halfway, you should be in Psalms. Sometimes Isaiah, that happens. Sometimes I'm in Isaiah. But if you go just a little ways to the left, you should find 2 Chronicles. So it's Old Testament, and the sermon was from Greater Archview Baptist Church. It might have been Palm Sunday. I'm not sure. Anyway, it was right around then, April 2nd. So this was from Pastor Kenneth Martin. And he was talking out of 2 Chronicles 34, just verses 1 through 8. And it's called, Even the Rocks Know God is God. And I'm going to set my timer before I forget. I apologize. I do this all the time, you guys. But I try and keep them short. So real quick, we're going to read not Isaiah. Got myself all off kilter when I turned to Isaiah. 2 Chronicles 34. Josiah was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 31 years. Sorry, I have a King James version I'm reading from, so it's going to sound kind of funny. And he did that which was right in the sight of the Lord, and walked in the ways of David his father, and declined neither to the right hand nor to the left. For in the 8th year of his reign, while he was yet young, he began to seek after the God of David his father, and in the 12th year he began to purge Judah and Jerusalem from the high places and the groves, and the carved images and the molten images. And they brake down the altars of Balaam in his presence, and the images that were on high above them he cut down, and the groves and the carved images and the molten images he brake in pieces, and made dust of them, and stowed it upon the graves of them that had sacrificed unto them. And he burnt the bones of the priests upon the altars, and cleansed Judah and Jerusalem. And so he did in the cities of Manasseh and Ephraim and Simeon, even unto Naphtali, with their mattocks round about. And when he had broken down the altars and the groves, and had beaten the graven images into powder, and cut down all the idols throughout all the land of Israel, he returned to Jerusalem. Now in the 18th year of his reign, when he had purged the land and the house, he sent Shaphan, the son of Azaliah, and, I'm going to stumble over these a little bit, Maaseiah, the governor of the city, and Joah, the son of Joahaz, the recorder, to repair the house of the Lord his God. So I apologize. Some of those old-fashioned names, and they're from a different language, and they're a little bit difficult for me to pronounce, but that's okay. That's not the meat of the story. So what he was talking about in this was that there's something that we need to pass on to the next generation. So if you remember from the beginning of that, he was only 8 years old when he began to reign in Judah. So back then the kings, well, even like now in, Great Britain, the king, it's like who's next in line. So it wasn't a political election like we have here for presidents. It was just who's next in line, and he was next in line, and he was 8 years old. So at 8 years old, he did have, and we won't get into all of it today, but he did have advisors and things like that. But he was 8 years old when he began to reign. So his grandfather had done horrible evil in the sight of the Lord. If you go back and read, I always tell you to read the chapter before, but if you go back and read or study a little bit about what was going on beforehand, his grandfather put up those idols, many of them, and his father was also very evil. So Josiah came in at 8 years old and did what was right in the sight of the Lord. And in just the 8th year of his reign, so he would have been 16 years old, he started to seek God. So something, he had been growing up in a time of chaos and corruption, witchcraft, murder. That was all really common in his day, and he was going against all of that. And so what Pastor Martin was saying was that we have to recognize that even though we don't see God working in people, it doesn't mean he isn't. because Josiah was 8 when he began to reign, but it says at 16, well, it says in the 8th year of his reign, so he would have been 16, is when he began to seek after God. So, he probably had people praying for him. He probably had godly advisors. God put people in his life to train him and help him in the way he should go. And it does say in verse 2, he didn't turn to the right hand or to the left, which is good. He did what was right in the sight of God. So before this, it doesn't say he was seeking after God. He was just doing what was right before God. So he might have been doing it to please God, or he might have been doing it because as he was growing up, he was taking the advice, kind of like kids obey their parents, right? They're not necessarily doing that for God. They're doing it because their parents said to, and they want to be good. They don't want to get in trouble. So that might have been why he was doing it. Like, it wasn't his parents, but whoever was raising him, maybe he was just trying to be good. But in the 8th year of his reign, he actually began to seek after God. So then in the 12th year, so when he was just 20 years old, he began to purge Judah and Jerusalem from the high places and the groves and the carved images and the molten images. So carved images would be idols. It makes me always think of a totem pole, right? Because those are like carved out and have the face of animals or people or whatever. And it might have been like that, but it might have been just a carved bear or a carved anything. But these were idols that they actually worshiped to. So they have ones that are carved, and then they had some that were molten. So molten would be like they melted down ore and made like the golden calf. It makes me think of the golden calf, like they melted their jewelry and made a golden calf. But they may have made it out of any number of things that could be melted and made into an image. So those are the molten images. And he broke all those down. He broke them down. He broke down the altars. And it says, and they broke them down in his presence. So he was there. He thought it a worthy enough cause that not only would he order people to do this, but he was going to be there and make sure it got done. And I think that speaks highly of him, but also reminds me that we need to do the same thing. We might be training our children to do something, or mentoring someone to do something, but we can't just say, oh, here it is, go do that. Like, we need to be present. We need to be in the moment with them. We need to take the time to check on them, make sure how things are going with them if we're mentoring. Go alongside them and help them with it. Make sure that they have what they need to be supported. So he said the first thing that we have to do is pursue the kingdom of God. Seek means go after. So he began to seek the Lord. He began to pursue him. He began to pursue something that he didn't have any knowledge of. So that's what he was seeking. He was seeking to get information and find out about this thing that he doesn't know about. And then he purged. So the second thing we do after we pursue God is we have to purge our idols. So he purged idols out of his life. And he said some things we need to get rid of. We need to let go, which is not always a lot of fun. But he tore down idols, and we have to do that too. So what are some idols in our lives? I know we've talked about it before, but an idol is anything that takes up more of your brain space than God. Honestly, if it's something that you think about constantly, then that's probably an idol. So not right now, because I took a nice break from social media when I was in Kansas, and there was a whole reason for all that. But in doing that, when I came back to Arizona, it was really helpful because I had that break. Like, I have to be on social media for my job, so it's really easy for me to be on there too long. Be on there, like, I have it open all the time on my computer because I'm pointing over here because that's where my computer is. Because people instant message me, they direct message me all the time on that little sidebar on my computer. So I have realtors and lenders and people that are messaging me, and it's way easier on the computer to type out a message to them real quick, get them the information they need, rather than trying to do it from my phone. So, but what I find is I get used to being on there. I get used to every single notification checking all day long. And so being off of it while I was in Kansas has helped me because I do still have to have it open for work, but I don't check it. Like if I don't hear it ding with a message, I don't have to get on there and look and see what's going on. Sometimes because I'm on hold a lot, because I call people a lot, right? So I'll be calling and it's easy to be like, oh, the phone's ringing and I'm diddling around on my computer, like looking at social media while I wait. But I've gotten out of that habit now that I took that break. So sometimes just taking a break can reset you. So that had been, I believe, an idol in my life because I was like on it all the time. And now it's so refreshing, and it feels like a weight off almost to not have that again, to just go, whew, I forgot how weighted that was. I know I'm doing it for work and whatever, but I had forgotten how much actual weight I was carrying with that. But you might have something else. It could be a television program. We binge watch Netflix these days, right, guys? I mean, we do. And so maybe that's what it is. Maybe you just can't wait to get to that next episode. It could be anything. But whatever's taken up most of your brain space, if it's not God, if you're not anxiously looking forward to getting into God's Word, or anxiously looking forward to listening to a sermon or a podcast or something to train you in the ways of God, then something's off. So you need to look at those things and purge whatever needs purged. And then a pattern. He made a pattern for his life. So he was looking at David's life. He was looking at seeking after the things of God, of David. It says of David his father, after the God of David his father. And so he knew that King David had followed God, and he was following that pattern. And so what pattern are you setting? What pattern are you setting for your people to follow? You might have kids that are following. You might have friends that are following. You might have coworkers that are following. If you have listened to my story from the very beginning, you know that when I was in high school, I was following Eric Rochester. He didn't know it. He got saved, and I was watching him. I was rooting for him. Everybody was saying it wasn't going to last, and he was going to be sorry and regret that he had, got rid of all his T-shirts with naughty sayings on them and all his music that was naughty. And they were all like saying he's going to wake up and realize, and he's going to regret that. But he didn't, and I was so rooting for him, so much so that I named my oldest child after him. And I had prayed that my son would be like him, would desire the things of God like he did. And I am so blessed because I got to introduce my son to Eric at one point in his life and tell my schoolmate, the story of how his life had affected me, which he had no idea that I had been watching or anything. And then also, though, my son has followed Jesus. And, Eric Rochester, my classmate, is now a pastor, and he's with the Sending Project in Kansas City. So if you want to look that up, that's a great organization. But my son is also in seminary and preaching and teaching people. And so I'm just so thankful that God answered those prayers. But what pattern are you setting? What pattern are you setting for people in your life? Who's watching you? Who's paying attention? You might not even know it. Eric didn't even know I was watching him. There could be someone at church. There could be someone in your town. There could be a neighbor that knows you go to church. They know you know God, and they're watching to see how you're living. What are you doing? Are you going to come across the street and tell them about Jesus? I waited, you guys, for the coveted invitation to go to Youth for Christ when I was in high school. That's where Eric Rochester was saved at. And I knew that group of kids. I wanted them to invite me. If I had said I want to go, they would have let me, but I was not brave enough to do that. I was a little party girl, and so I really wanted them to ask me, and I would have gone, but they never did. And so who is waiting on you to ask? Who you don't know. Those kids had no idea I wished they would have asked me. But there's somebody in your life, I'm sure, that's watching, that's just hoping you'll invite them to church, or just hoping that you'll tell them about Jesus, just hoping that you'll come pray with them. And I know it seems hard to believe because you think about the people in your life and you're like, nah, no, probably not them. But you don't know who it is. Only God knows. So you just got to look for opportunities and just share, overshare, just share and share and share, no matter who you are with, and God will open the doors. So that is all I have for you today. Pursue, purge, and pattern. Those are the 3 P's to remember. So pursue God and purge out the idols and pattern your life and see who you can make an impact on. And I hope you guys have a great week. And if you're watching, today's Mother's Day. I was going to say Happy Mother's Day, but this will upload tomorrow and it won't be Mother's Day anymore. So happy belated Mother's Day to any of you that are watching in real time. And I hope you had a great day. Bye-bye.